Morning, folks. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Well, it's
Hi, Franz.
Lisa. How are you? Good to see you. Morning, Rob, Marcus. Folks are going to be. Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
Looks like you have some Swiss suns shining in on you there.
I'm sure they're gonna go on mute.
No, no problem. No problem at all. All right. Give it a second. Let folks come on in. Morning, Brendan. Jeff joining us. Scott, Mr. Herman. I'll give another minute for folks to roll in. All right, we'll get started at 4 past the hour. I'm in a Delta Lounge at the SeaTac Airport, so I'll be keeping my voice down. And I'm going to share my screen and we'll get going. Yeah. Yep. All right, it's 4 after, so let's go ahead and get going. Welcome everyone to our first regular weekly um, call of the Decentralized Trust Graph Working Group. For folks who weren't here on the kickoff meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, hopefully everyone now has the information that we have picked this meeting slot, which was formerly the slot used by the Cross-Cutting Protocol Task Force of the Technology Stack Working Group, but they're now going to asynchronous mode because the 1.0 spec is nearing completion. We're happy to give us this with the provision that if they need to have a meeting, they give us a week's notice. We will turn over the slot, which should not happen very often, like maybe once a quarter, something like that. Anyway, so welcome. I see we have a mix of folks who were here at the kickoff meeting and folks who were not. So I think what we'll do is well, actually, let me see. I need to start out by always pointing everyone to the antitrust policy notice that all Linux Foundation meetings take place under. This is also a joint meeting of the trustworthy and of DIF, Decentralized Identity Foundation. So anyone from either one of those organizations is welcome. If you're not currently signed up with either one of those, you're welcome to observe but not contribute, so we don't run into any IPR issues. So trying to figure out, why don't we go ahead and do introductions of folks who were not here last week, and then anyone who was here last week and wants to do an introduction, you're welcome to. But the folks also feel free to put put a link or put information in the chat, or I'm also gonna, we set up this last right there, I'm gonna put in the chat. This is what we call our bio page. And if you plan to attend regularly or want to know both others on the working group to know a little bit about you and vice versa, feel free to just add your information to the bio page. Everyone has edit rights to that. I'm showing you the bio page right now with, we have a whole bunch of folks that joined on the last call. And feel free to add that there. And I'll just briefly call out folks that going down the list that are not here last week and ask them just to a very brief introduction. Let's see, we'll start, Michael Herman. If you're
too busy filling in that bio page. I'm a decentralized systems architect working on Web 7.0, and I drop in and out of these working groups from time to time. And I've been doing it for quite a few years, going back to the early versions of working with Drummond on the DID spec.
Super. Glad to have you, Michael. And Riza.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my first offender. I'm Riza Rasool. I'm chair of Kwai. Kwai is a non-profit AI lab. We're coming up to 1,000 members, and we're about to merge with another organization, so it'll take us, increase our size by an order of magnitude. What do we do? Well, I'm having worked in corporate world. I was CTO at Real Networks. I retired, and I thought that AI needs to go in a safer direction, and it needs a non-profit open source movement to do that. We're building a decentralized infrastructure that allows you to run AI in a decentralized way. We've already solved running LLMs across multiple smaller nodes, so everyone can participate now in the AI economy. And we are solving how to distribute your knowledge base, share your knowledge base in a privacy preserving way with homomorphic encryption. We think those two technologies are essential for democratizing AI. That's it. If you want to learn more, I'll drop information in the bio document.
That would be great. I'm always been a big fan of Kwai, and you're going to be, as I understand it, VRM Day I think it's just 2 weeks.
Doc Searles is our Chief Intention Officer, so we've got a rich vein of troublemakers, I guess, critical thinkers in the area of AI. We welcome more participation.
Perfect. Excellent. Yeah, and again, anyone who's just joining now, I'll put a note, just because you can't see earlier stuff, just put another link to the bio page there, where you can learn about the other folks that are on the on our participant list here today. And for all you regulars, I'm going to use my trick here of rather than having to take attendance, you can take a snapshot, which I'm doing right now, of the attendance list, and paste it in right here, and boom. Except the problem is I've got too many windows in the way. Give me just a second so I don't get that, and then we can get going. There it is, right there. Okay, Now, once you put it in the middle of the page, it doesn't really matter. All right. Let me rearrange windows here. So I'm on a laptop, so I don't have the screen space I normally do. All right, quick review of the agenda today. First action items. Actually, I'll back all the way up. We'll start out. This is only our second meeting, but does anyone have, besides what Reza just shared, an overall update or announcement that you want to share with the group, just about the overall work of things happening in the space? Just always leave time for that at the outset in case. Oh, I see a hand going up.
Hello there.
Mitchell, go ahead.
Let me just check. I think my camera's working. Hey, everyone. Good to see you again. So next week, I'll be hosting in Washington, D.C., the Blockchain Governance Initiative Network sort of standard setting body conference. It's called Block 13. And at that meeting, I'm actually experimenting a multi-agentic framework that uses a lot of the white papers and technology that's been discussed in this group, and sort of tries to experiment in a governance setting, standard setting environment, how this all works. So if you would like more information on that, feel free to reach out. I am running a sort of a hackathon style approach alongside the standard setting conversation. So there will be an opportunity to contribute to like an open source code base, but also in the traditional standard setting environment where you do deliberation, discussion, and then these sorts of things. Thank you.
Super. Feel free, Mitch, if you've got a link to put it in the chat, and then I'll copy it in the minutes. Oh, what we got quite the queue going here. Okay, Michael, you're next.
This is a little bit off to the side, but there's been quite an interesting book come out this year called Reshuffle, and I highly recommend it to everybody. It's you may think of it as an AI book, but it's really about business, a very deep business book, and happens to, be set in an AI context. It's really an extraordinary book.
Great recommendation. If you happen to have a link, feel free to put it in the chat, and I'll copy it into the minutes. And next up is Reza.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago during the UN General Assembly meeting week, a work group was kicked off. It's called Loyal Agents. The term loyal agents comes from Bruce Schneier, who talks about trust in AI. And he says, make sure when you're using an agent, it's loyal and not a double agent working on behalf of some vendor. And so the term was adopted. The work group is led by Consumer Reports, and they convened the meeting. It includes Project Liberty, which is the Frank McCourt nonprofit, and GleaNet, which is Richard Witt's organization that promotes the notion of net fiduciaries, and Quai was there. So 4 organizations kicked it off. I feel that it's going to be the front branding of this whole trust over IP movement, especially for AI. I think we need to participate in it. There's lots of good representation for talking about governance and policy and regulations over there. Not a lot around the actual nitty-gritty of what is the tech stack that'll ensure that your agent is loyal to you. And I think that's where groups like Trust Over IP and this group in particular could participate. And I think Quai wants to gather together what that tech stack would be and find out where the missing gaps are and fill it. So
that would be great. Is there a link? If you have one, feel free to put it in the chat.
Well, okay. So currently the way that we are talking is over Slack, and it's a Slack shared Slack channel between these different organizations. So you need to become a member of any one of these organizations, Project Liberty, GleaNet, Consumer Reports, or Quai. Becoming a member of Quai is free, and that gets you access to the Slack channel. And that's probably the quickest way in. But it's now expanded to 23 organizations. I think we need to get a part of it. I'll send a link to it. I can send you if anybody look it. Just go to the Quai kwaai.ai channel. There's a sign up button, and then that'll get you access to it.
Oh, excellent.
Okay.
Yes, good point. Okay, that's super. And one more, Scott.
All right, so I'm speaking at the Utah Valley University State Endorsed Digital Identity Summit. There should be 10 states represented, all looking at creating a state-driven digital identity for citizen to government. So I'll put the link in the chat. I'll talk about open standards and open protocols, obviously mentioning trust over IP and others.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a major initiative down there. Glad they're taking the lead on that. I'm glad you're speaking there. Perfect. Okay, as everyone can see, there's a lot going on in this space. Again, always feel free to put any links if anyone else has anything they want to share. Feel free to put in the chat. And okay, so balance for our schedule quickly. Our action items, the two from last week, both of them are done. We have, and in fact, the second half of our agenda today will be on risk assessment and harms prevention task force suggested last week. And we have the meeting scheduled and in the calendar, and everyone's here. Thank you. So our two agenda items today. First, I'm going to just talk through. We prepared a table of potential deliverables for discussion of this group, which you sort of work from your deliverables backwards into, okay, what task forces do you want to form to work on those deliverables? As for folks who weren't here last week, we advocate this. Whoops! Oh, I moved accidentally my mouse. It's not a formal joint development foundation organizational construct. Our charter simply goes to the working group level, but within working groups at Trust ORP, we like to do self-organized task forces and let them drive the deliverables or work within a working group. And so we can form any task forces we want. And so again, Scott and Nikki will talk about the first proposed task force, the second half of our agenda. I'll go over the potential deliverables. We can talk about other ones shortly. And then, yeah, so they'll do that in the second half of the call. So before we dive into that, are there any other agenda items anyone wants to try and have us cover today? Just checking, got to be able to see hands. Okay, all good. All right, so let's dive into the first one, which is, and I'll put it here, this is our home page. And this is actually linked directly down to the deliverables heading, which was there before, but didn't have anything in it. And now I'm going to scroll down to that section. A little hard to these things here. Okay, so down here under, so these, by the way, the task force list is a list of potential task forces. I put risk assessment and harms prevention at the top of the list because that's the first one's been suggested we need to form. Now, I'll try and I think I can get this whole thing. There's been some more editing of folks, which is exactly what's supposed to happen. Take this guy here and close it so I can see all this on my screen. All right, so we have, let's see, five potential, or no, there's one more at the top. Okay, so these first two, Scott and Nikki are going to talk to. today about both of which would be deliverables from their proposed task force, risk assessment guide, and harms prevention and business requirements definition. And we classify, is a deliverable a spec, a guide, or recommendation, or a white paper. Go ahead, Scott.
So the first one isn't really a guide. I'd say it's an assessment matrix. You know, we're gonna have a deliverable matrix, and it'll be a type of, and we'll go over what it looks like. Oops.
I have no idea
And,
what caused that. I want to go back to the page there. All right.
Yeah,
Oh, maybe it's because I wasn't in edit mode. There we go.
It'll be
All right, back to that.
Yeah, it'll be an assessment.
Okay.
It's an so type assessment. It's an assessment. It's not really a guide. It's an assessment.
We don't have a type assessment. Something's either
You don't have a type assessment, so it would be
it's a spec, a recommendation, or a guide, either one, or a white paper.
Okay, then guide is fine. And current content notes would be, it would be a risk assessment matrix.
Yes. Okay. Matrix. Should I say based on the Trust IP guide or the Trust IP?
Yeah, sure. Based on Trust over IP risk assessment companion guide.
Companion guide. Okay.
And template.
Companion guide.
And template.
Got it. And you'll cover that a little bit more when
we're
in the
going
second
to
half
go
of the
over the companion guide and the template before Nikki tells me how wrong I was. So
okay. And Nikki's going to go over the second one on human harms prevention.
Yeah, that's more of a recommendation.
Yeah. So, what do you want to? We use the term be the guide recommendation. If
Yeah, the business requirements will be a recommendation. So I think we need to. Obviously, last time we did a white paper, which you can take or leave. A spec is a spec, but I'd love to be able to do a business specification. Like you should implement these things to make it work properly, but it's business requirements.
Yes, exactly. Which falls in a category. What do you want to call recommendation or guide? It's not a technical specification. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we'll couch them in the usual terms: may, should.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so both of you we'll talk further about those in the second half of the meeting. So let's look at the other four proposed here. And these are three of them are actual specifications, and then there's this potential discussion around what we might call a sovereign wallet guide. So the probably the most obvious one is the credential specification. As we discussed last week, and was the background reading that we've is available. Actually, I'll just point it out, folks that are new. On our wiki here, and while I'm editing this page, so I won't put the link in right now, but we have this a set of background information. There's a page on personal credentials, verifiable relationship credentials, zero knowledge proofs, privacy reserved personas, and R cards, relationship cards, as 5 sort of core fundamental building blocks for decentralized trust graphs. And that really, it's that background in our charter, which is above this on the page, suggests this, this potential breakdown of our work into, okay, what are the credentials specifications? What are the exchange protocol specification? And this covers the personal credentials, PHCs, and verifiable relationship credentials, VRCs, and the associated requirements. But basically, it separates out the credentials and then the exchange protocols. And you can see a checklist of what, not comprehensive, but just high level, what would be covered in each of those. which is, you could argue that could all be a single specification, both the formats and the protocols, but I think it'd be a little bit cleaner to keep them separate. But that's just one person's point of view. And I'll just briefly cover the others. So R cards, now in this case, this is a narrower subject where I think having the schema and the exchange protocol specification in a single document does make sense. Now, again, that's just one person's point of view, but it's a narrower set of functionality or the two, and how they interrelate is more tightly bound. So that's, again, a proposal there. This last one, what do you want to call it, a guide or recommendation? I'm going to change this to recommendation too. Is basically putting together, when I talk to folks about the decentralized trust graphs, what we're doing, and these sets of specifications, they're saying, well, there aren't any wallets that do that today. And the answer is, you're right, they're not. This is a set of behavior for digital wallets and agents that we're specifying because it can give its various benefits in the market, and in at least a few places now that's being called, okay, you're talking about the design of a sovereign wallet. So it's not something we have to make any decision about right now, but it feels to me like it would be very helpful for us to put together, not as it refers to our specs, but it would basically be an implementation guide that put these together. So I'm going to stop right there, and oh boy, suddenly the sun has just come over. I've got to. I'm literally going to put my hat on, streaming in the window here so I can see the screen. Any thoughts about these first 5 proposed deliverables? Watch for hands here. Go ahead, Nikki.
I was just wondering how they could work together, because if we're, for example, defining some requirements, might they feed into the specification working groups?
Yes,
Oh,
that is
task
exactly.
forces, sorry. So is there a kind of a working group process that ensures there's a kind of feedback loop between what's identified in the risk assessment? I mean, it's a process, but we're going to have a canter through it with some use cases, aren't we, Scott?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, so
exactly.
there's a bit of an iterative process. That's
yes.
just what I was wondering.
That's why the risk assessment harms prevention task force is the first one we're proposing. Get that cycle going. There's already, we can have task forces form for these others, and they could, sort of begin getting their skeletons stuff together. But I completely agree, and I want to reinforce that's been a natural cycle in other working groups. Is you start with task forces focused on use cases and requirements, and then you move into specifications, and then you move into things like implementation guides or the things that involve with actual adoption. So that makes sense to me. It's really up to us to sort of organize our task forces to that workflow, and so that makes sense to me. Riza, go ahead.
Yeah, so the risk assessment framework or matrix, I'd love to participate on that. I think I got some experience from the streaming media world of when the boot was on the other foot, when it was content owners that were worried about their what risks they were exposing themselves to by putting their content online. And this was basically the Hollywood studios and so on. And so a lot of energy went into that risk assessment matrix and the remediation that would be required by each of these streaming operators in order to get licenses. So it's a battle tested framework, at least for a different domain, a different problem. But I think there's stuff we can learn from in the methodology and the way it was deployed. And now you've got companies like Netflix and Hulu and so on that have got to jump over that hurdle, that risk assessment matrix, and show that they've got the remediation in place in order to get a check mark, and so they can license content. I think it's worth looking at that.
Completely agree. And which is, again, why we're proposing to start there. Now, again, my agenda item was only to basically direct everyone's attention to these straw man proposals. This is all on, and what I'll do is I'll hit the update button, which will now give me the proper URL. And I can paste this in the chat. So this table appears on our homepage here. As you can see in the windows around over. So we have in our hierarchy on the wiki, that's our homepage, and then we have our meeting pages, and then our basically information pages. Another practice we follow is as we introduce deliverables, we give them a homepage on the wiki as well. So specification or guide, if you want the current, well, where is it? What's the status? Who's working on it? That stuff. That's all on that page. Just to end up with maybe a dozen pages under our section, but it makes it easy to always know where you can go find something. So that table exists on our homepage. If you have any thoughts or comments, again, if you're new to a Confluence wiki, you can actually add comments. Besides editing, you can do commenting. It works fairly well. So I'm just going to basically complete this agenda item by saying, if you want to come down and you have thoughts about the table, feel free to comment there, or our Discord channel, which hopefully everyone is joining. I'm going to turn it over to the our other agenda item here today. Obviously, I was not editing on that page. That's it. Which is to Scott and Nikki to talk about that first task force. I think, Scott, you're going to kick us off. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I do.
Perfect.
Okay. Let me go here. So I put in the chat, and now you can see it, the risk assessment companion guide that sits in the Trust over IP deliverables page. And so what is, why do we talk about risk assessment? Why is this important? Because it answers the question of why are we doing this? And to what extent the work that Drummond had mentioned, all these specifications and recommendations, how they can be used to mitigate risk, not eliminate risk. And then the question is what risks are we talking about? So in the ecosystem, and that's really the context of trust over IP, we deal with the proliferation of verifiable credentials within an ecosystem. And so that's the drive, that's the context of the risks that would drive, our task force, to discover this. So I'm going to give you a 5-minute run through of risk assessment processes, and then introduce you to a template which has been used by other ecosystems to advance and facilitate the process based on their ecosystems, and we can use it for our ecosystem of the credentials mentioned by Drummond. So in the risk assessment, I would, anyone that is interested in participating in the task force should download and read through this process, okay, and gives you some context about where was this process driven from, and what are the steps around it. So gives you an introduction around risk and the purposes of risk assessments, different generally accepted risk assessment standards and processes in the marketplace, that this process was driven by ISO. ISO 27000 series is the most widely accepted ISO standard, and it has in 27005, that's the risk assessment module associated with that information security management system. NIST also has a standard for doing risk assessments. And so both of these were driven. They gave you some concepts and definitions about risk technology and terminology. Okay, so we're not going to spend too much time. We're going to focus on the risk assessment process. Okay, and so our task force needs to go through this process, and part of how it is best to be gone through is asynchronous and sessions, which we need to schedule. I don't know, that's probably going to be the most difficult thing, is to find time that folks can get together and discuss some of these key things, which is to establish the context. What are we talking about here? We have a couple of credentials that Drummond had mentioned. We need a surrounding infrastructure to support the issuance and verification of those credentials. And so, we need to define in some regard, what is the ecosystem, so that we know, where risks, can come from. And then we'll get down to identifying risks. Risks are bad things that can happen. I mean, it's the easiest way to explain it. Without any context of how you could mitigate it. It's, don't think about the controls or the governance or anything. Is given without any control, what are threats and harms that can occur. It's why we're tying in with threats and harms. Threats and harms and risks all categorize things that are challenging, that have to have mechanisms to mitigate it if you want to deem that ecosystem trustworthy. So we're going to spend some time. I have, in the guide that I'll show you, the template, we pre-formed some risks to give folks some ideas on the types, but as Nikki's going to go through, we'll drive the content of risks associated with it. And once we have an identification of a variety of risks that make sense, we'll stop, and then we'll start using those individual risks, because we need to analyze those risks in two categories: the likelihood of that risk and the impact if that risk was to fester or happen in a large scale without any mitigation. And because that is, we'll make some choices around risks and mechanisms to mitigate risks that have both that combination of likelihood and impact. Okay, and then with that, we'll determine the severity of the risk with those factors addressed. And we do have a methodology for that. We can modify the methodology based on this particular context. It has a methodology to calculate that impact. We could accept it or use something different. And at the end of the day, we'll be looking at a canvas of a variety of risk possibilities. Some are low, some are high, and at some point, what the methodology recommends is that we do a triage. We look at all the risks. I mean, you can't address every risk that you identify. Some may not even be mitigated by specifications and recommendations that we do within this working group. And we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. But at minimum, we're going to have to do a triage. We're going to have to make a selective cut of the ones above the line we're going to deal with, and we're going to identify, and we're going to spend more time with, and below the line is deemed low to the point where it doesn't make sense to spend the energy and the specifications and all the effort associated to mitigating it. Okay, so risk mitigation is not risk elimination, it's mitigation. And so there are a variety of ways to treat risk. You could accept the risk, and in some cases, maybe lower levels of risk, you would accept it and say we don't have a mechanism to reduce it. Okay, or there could be other methods like transferring the risk to another entity or another party. But the main activities that we will do, sorry for missing this, is we're going to mitigate it. We're going to look at what are mechanisms, and this will be fed into the specifications and requirements groups to come up with specifications to address risk. We're not going to, spend all the time in detailed around the mitigation. We're going to come to groups of, we need to have specifications in this area. And basically it drives the scope of the specification, because what we're doing in specification, identification is to mitigate risk. So we have to have a tie there, and we want to have that communication so that we're only working on things in the specification and requirement area that address the risks that make sense to control within the ecosystem we are communicating back out. So we're going to identify what we could do, whether it makes sense to mitigate it or even avoid it. Okay, or put your head in the sands. There are some risks that our mechanisms within our working group can't do anything about, because they exist and we don't have the control mechanisms to affect it and mitigate it. So that's another discussion that really will be illuminating to a lot if we do identify certain risks that we cannot mitigate. That's an interesting and a very important thing for our working group to really understand. And then at the end of the day, we're probably going to stop after we identify risks that need to get mitigated. Now, it's not the end of a risk assessment. What we'll do, if it's properly done like other organizations that have used this methodology, we're going to go and work on all the specifications and recommendations. And then we should come back to the risk assessment to see, did we address certain risks? Are there risks that are hanging out there that we didn't do anything with? And that is a check on the completeness of things. So the ones that we did not address with the mitigations that we're looking to will be what we consider residual risk. Okay, and that is explained in phase 5, where we've looked and we've addressed risks, but there's still maybe the specifications we're developing don't address the risk completely, and there are avenues that we need to identify that says, you know what, we're not going to completely address this, we're mitigating it to this level, and it creates a way to communicate transparently to relying parties what we're able to do and what we're not able to do. And I'll tell you, that has been very powerful in the work that I've been doing with the C2PA, because we went through this process. We went through the risk assessment. They have a threats and harms group. We identified those things, and then we applied it to the conformance program that we're dealing with. And we have a clearer idea of what we can address in the marketplace or not, because it's a well-adopted specification and standard, and people are coming in, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. Well, we have to communicate that we can only do the amount of work that we have the ability to do within the construct of the governance and the conformance program. Okay, I'm going to take a breath. Is there any questions before I just walk through quickly the template and then hand it over to Nikki? Okay. All right. So this is going to go very quickly. I'm not going to spend more than just a couple of minutes. If I can get it in, you can. I think I made this available, Drummond, somewhere. I was trying to get it into the trust over IP decentralized trust graph place. So we need to get this. I modified the template that I downloaded from Trust over IP deliverables. Okay. And we have a title page and we're dealing with a template and such. I'm looking at it. I don't think even this is the exact one. No, this is the, let me see if I can find the, I'm going to see if quickly, I did make a modification to this and I wanted to represent that one more because that had some changes in it. Okay, here it is. Sorry about that. I'm going to pull that in. It's coming up. Okay, now I got it. Okay, if I can pull it over quickly. All right, so we have a risk assessment worksheet. Okay, and what I did is basically, the template had risks associated with it. And we had some categories of risk. When you're dealing with a verifiable credential ecosystem, we have issuers, we have verifiers, and we have holders. So we talk, we populated a set of risks that are generically known. We were talking about wallets, and that's an area we can either use it, and all of this, some of this, none of it. Okay. And obviously we have an area harms. We're going to add specific harms around that. So this is this is the point or the place that we could identify the risks and populate the risks. And then this is also the place where we categorize them. We can categorize them by trust over IP layer in different trust areas affected if you care to add these different things in there. And now we use this model to assess the severity and the likelihood, which are key factors in risk assessment, to then populate a risk impact. And if we want to go ahead with the way this is done in some biased way, and we can discuss it when we get into it. It does front load and it adds certain, if it's higher risk, we front load higher risks. And then we talk about here what's needed to be done for mitigation. So we're not going to get into a heck of a lot on this. This gives some guidance to the rest of the working group task forces around how, what actions, if we decide that the risk treatment is to mitigate, you can say mitigate, avoid, accept, or transfer, then this gives some guidance to the specifications group that you need to have specifications to address this risk. Okay. Any other questions? I wanted to give Nikki as much time as she can. So it looks like Reza, you had a question?
Yeah, just briefly, I'm really glad that you're using NIST as the framework or the guidance here. We should consider making this not just a matrix that gets frozen in time once we publish it, but keep it operational, and that really improves the relevance of it and maintains the relevance of it. Come up with maybe a scoring tool where people can self-score their agents for the amount of risk, and additionally allow users to score systems and perhaps maintain a leaderboard, and that helps keep that the whole thing fresh. And then what NIST did was they opened up ability for people to report vulnerabilities. The CVE database is the common vulnerabilities exposure database, which is now really useful in cybersecurity. I think that same sort of methodology and the maturing of that space we should apply and anticipate in the work of sort of agentic AI and so on. So I'm amazed at the level of detail that you've got here already for only the second meeting of this group. So well done.
Well, this is, I mean, this is part of the template. Okay, that's available. I didn't really even add any of the risk. A couple of things around that, and I think Drummond, you have to address it too. This is a specification group. Okay, the decentralized trust graph. We're not an ecosystem that is going to use this for its own purposes. There may be a first person project that's going to take this information as a recommendation and then expand upon it for that particular aspect. So we're creating really tools and techniques very tailored for these sets of credentials that are going to go out and then operated. So, this isn't going to be the risk assessment for in operation. This is going to be a risk assessment for these types of credentials to be used by credential management ecosystems like first person credential and things
Right.
like that.
It's an input to the ecosystems who will then, take it and extend it to their own risk assessment guide. All right. We have one
Okay.
other hand up, and then I want to make sure we leave time for Nikki to talk
Yep.
about harm prevention. Go ahead, Daniel.
You're on mute,
Daniel.
Daniel.
You're on mute, Daniel. I see his hand up, but I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, and I still see that he's on mute.
Can you hear me now,
there you
maybe?
go.
Can you
Okay,
hear me?
now we
Sorry,
can
sorry.
hear you. Yeah.
I was struggling
Go
a lot
ahead.
finding the right button here on the phone. So sorry for that. No, I just wanted to add something to the discussion here, because we when we deal with the AI agents, we use also a lot of benchmarks, and that's also maybe in operational part, as you said, it's got, that's right. Maybe there we can also benefit from a collection of benchmark for different threats tied to this risk, because the risk management is something not everyone is really interested in and doesn't catch the attention of people unless you build an audit and then also show progress within audits, so that you progress and that you have some evidence to signal risks. That's just what I wanted to mention.
No, I
Thank you.
appreciate that. That's why this is fairly lightweight. We're not going to spend a ton of time in the task force, but we need to set the scope. And so I'm going to pass it off to Nikki and stop sharing my
Okay.
screen.
Ball over to you, Nikki, to talk about
Yeah, I'm really conscious that we've got 7 minutes and we've got quite a few other agenda items. So I'll leave my explanation.
No, just to be clear, this is the only remaining agenda item today.
Okay. I'll be very quick then. I put something in the chat then. So last year we did a project on, or a couple of years ago it is now, on understanding the human harms, the real world consequences for human people in digital identity ecosystems or digital trust ecosystems. So this is a wonderful opportunity to kind of operationalize that, give some really concrete guidance to product managers and developers and specification designers that you all are. So this is the framework, and it thinks about, because I'm quite experienced with risk frameworks. I've used Scott's method. It's brilliant. It's very systematic, but it really requires a clear understanding and scope of that ecosystem. So we can do, we've got lots of tools and techniques to make that, I promise you, a fun and engaging experience. It's not all doom and gloom. So this is the harms framework. And what you see here is these different contexts. And for example, the credential exchange is a P2P decision context. So that's where the direct harms can apply. And you've got these countermeasures or strategies for mitigating and offsetting those risks of harms and improving the experience and the outcomes for people. Of course, decentralized, doing a harms or risk assessment for an organization, I bet everyone in this room has done one from time to time, even if it's only I'm going on a camping trip, I'm evaluating where I put my tent. We're all used to that when we're thinking about us or our organization or our country or something like that. But what's challenging here is two things. First of all, it's decentralized, and secondly, it's something quite new and relational, and therefore, one of the conclusions of the white paper really, really applies, and therefore, I think we'll be stretching our minds and thinking about these two pictures. So, the first is this shows how harms are infectious across ecosystems and across boundaries between different digital trust ecosystems and jurisdictions. So, as much as we might have all the right we believe in the goodness of human nature, the fact is that you know badness happens, risks and harms will happen. It's just a fact. And really, what we're thinking about is this complex adaptive system. So putting in countermeasures and signals into the system that recognize emergent properties and enable early identification of harms or badness flowing through the system. So that's the kind of researchy, mind-stretching aspect of what I hope we'll start to think about in this. But the goal of the task force is to define those business requirements. There's quite a lot in the white paper, and I expect to be able, I'm really excited to be able to work with Scott's really rigorous process and get the kind of so what question into the risk assessment, the outcomes for people. That is fundamentally the needle we're trying to shift here with this working group. That's it.
So, Nikki, I have a question really for Drummond with you. And, we need to spend some time, but I also think this is a good orientation for the entire group to understand the context of the credentials. And I'm going to ask Drummond if we could at least start the process by taking half the time next week, 30 minutes to start the context. That's the first step, which is really discussing, because all the credentials and the working groups and what is it that this group, what's the edges of the definition? And I think that that's a required discussion for all working, all of these task forces that we're developing. We need to have a better understanding of what we're dealing with. So I'm going to make a proposal that we use, as opposed to trying to find another time that would be very difficult. We already have a time. We could use part of the time we have next week to start the process. You're on mute.
I was on mute. I'm fully supportive of that, because I think we as we've been discussing, we need to start, with these, start with the risk assessment and the harms. This will also, in my experience, the only way to actually do that is you have to also start with your, improving and sharpening your understanding of the system you're trying to create and the solution you're trying to put forward. So as we keep saying, it's an iterative process, and we have to, as a new working group, understand and deepen our understanding of the solution in order to go through this process of assessing the risks and then looking at the harms and the ways around them. So yeah, and unless anyone objects, let's plan on that being the majority of the next call. And then if anyone else has something that they also want to see on the agenda, just let me know. But otherwise, that I think that's a really good place to start. I will point out one thing: the week after that is Internet Identity Workshop, and my recommendation is never try and hold any meetings outside of Internet Identity Workshop. At least there are a significant number of us that would not be able to attend. So I think that will be an off week for us. But this will be a really good topic for us to tackle next week and get a good start on before we hit the IW break.
So I'll follow up with you. I'll follow up with you on, I think I need you to describe and have some document to describe the ecosystem so that we know what we're dealing with. So I'm going to have you lead that as part of the process. I'll facilitate, make sure that we're holding to the risk assessment process. I expect, and we should expect, everyone to read the harms document and the companion guide and the template. So somehow we need to get all those available.
I'm putting them all into the notes, and we'll add those as action items. I know we're out of time, so I will do that as I listen to the start of the next meeting. And thank you, everyone, for coming. We will see you. There is the APAC call, just mentioning that, at 6 p.m. Pacific tonight. For us, it's the next day for folks in the APAC area. And then we'll see everyone next week. Again, in the interim, please do use the Discord channel. I don't have access to a link right now, but hopefully everyone can find that easily. And we will see everyone on the next meeting. Thank you all.